Have you ever come face to face with pure evil? I was 13 when I met Carl and Lorna, and honestly, they saved my life. I'd been through 4 foster homes by then, and each one was worse than the last. One family locked the fridge. Another one made me sleep in the garage. But Carl and Lorna were different. They had this big yellow house with a tire swing in the backyard and actual bedrooms for kids. Carl was the kind of guy who taught me how to change oil in his garage on Saturday mornings. He'd crack jokes and tell stories about when he was my age. Lorna made these incredible pancakes every Sunday, and never once made me feel like I was just another mouth to feed. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. By the time I turned 17, I was calling Carl Dad without even thinking about it. He'd beam every time I said it, like it made his whole day. I was planning to stay local for college so I wouldn't have to leave them. They felt like my real family. One afternoon, I was digging around Carl's garage looking for a socket wrench to fix my bike. That's when I spotted this old metal filing cabinet shoved behind some paint cans. It had a padlock on it, which seemed weird for just garage stuff. I'm not proud of this, but I was curious. I grabbed a paperclip and picked the lock, figuring it was probably just old tax papers or something boring. What I found inside made my stomach drop to the floor. There were newspaper clippings everywhere, dozens of them, all about the same person, my biological mother, Janet. I'd been told she died in a house fire when I was little, but these articles were about her going to prison for vehicular manslaughter. She'd killed a pregnant woman and her baby in a drunk driving accident. That wasn't even the worst part. There were letters in the cabinet, recent ones, from prison. My mom was still alive and she'd been writing to someone. The letters were addressed to Carl. My hands were shaking as I read through them. They talked about AA meetings, about staying sober, about forgiveness, about me. Carl had been her sponsor before she went to prison. He knew her. He knew everything. I confronted him that night at dinner. Just dropped the whole file cabinet contents on the kitchen table while Lorna was doing dishes. "What the hell is this?" I asked him. Carl went completely pale. Lorna turned around from the sink and saw all the papers spread out. She gasped and put her hand over her mouth. They both knew exactly what I'd found. Carl sat down heavily in his chair and didn't say anything for like 5 minutes. The silence was killing me. Finally, he looked up at me with these tired eyes and said, "I was hoping you'd never have to know." That's when he told me the truth. Yes, he'd been my mom's sponsor, but the night she killed that family, she hadn't been alone. Carl had relapsed too. He'd been drinking at the same bar, and when she said she was going to drive home, he actually gave her his car keys because her hands were shaking so bad. He let her drive drunk. A pregnant woman and her unborn baby died because of that decision. Carl managed to lie to the police about where he'd been that night. He said he was home sleeping. My mom never threw him under the bus, even though she could have. She took the full blame and went to prison alone. I left AA after that, Carl said, staring at the table. I was too ashamed to show my face anywhere. But a few years later, I found out Janet had given birth to a son before she got locked up. That son was you. The room felt like it was spinning. So you adopted me to what? Make yourself feel better? Carl's eyes filled with tears. At first, maybe. I thought if I could give you a good life, it would somehow balance out what I'd done. But Darius, you have to believe me. It stopped being about guilt a long time ago. You saved me. I never would have stayed sober without you. I couldn't sleep for days after that. Every time I looked at Carl, all I could think about was that pregnant woman who never made it home. How different my life would have been if my mom hadn't driven that night. How Carl had basically bought his way into heaven by adopting me. I stopped talking to him completely. Lorna tried to mediate, but I wasn't having it. 2 weeks later, I decided I needed to see my mom. Carl drove me to the prison, even though I hadn't spoken to him since our confrontation.